only going to mention this once in the words COVID. So, but what a better way to adapt to change, because we launched my account in January 2021, but everybody had to adapt to change then because it was in the throes of the pandemic, weren't we really? So what do we do to enable us to adapt and respond to change? And James alluded to some of this earlier before, but we talk to our staff about what good service design is. It's really important, and taking those local approaches to using technology designed around our people. We make sure that digital is really embedded within the authority and designed around the people and is core to everything that we do. And leadership, yeah, we do have buy-in, don't we? And it's easy, it is easy because we have got buy-in, but I think our leadership is more connected around our networks and our individuals, and they listen to what we're saying, and we create an environment where innovation can thrive. And you know, we need to advance innovation within our organisation. You need to let people have freedom and permission, and that's certainly what I've done with our team. Let them take risks, let them make mistakes, that's how we learn and we go on our journey. And let them be creative, but also making sure now that digital is everybody's kind of responsibility. And that's where our kind of Wigan behaviours come in. You know, we make people be accountable for what they're doing, but also that courageous aspect really. And you know, innovation is a massive value within our behaviours as well, which helps us to kind of move forward. So what we've done in Wigan, and especially our team and within the authorities, look at our approach now. And in governance is critical for this change. So you know, you have to scope the field of engagement and ensure our decision making is right to help us to improve performance, so it becomes more stable and obviously more productive. And user-centred design, you'll all be familiar with this now. It gives insight and evidence before we start building, and we've got to design this with our users, not just for our users, because then it gives people a sense of ownership, and that's kind of what we've done in Wigan. And without that, we need to ensure data. Data's a massive part. We've got a massive data strategy now within the council. The data and insight into our decision making helps us to move and shift things along. We have to make some complex decisions at pace, otherwise we're always going to just be fighting old ways and new ways together. And having them insights helps us to kind of manage those risks. We've all got really big budget pressures at the moment, haven't we? So it's kind of challenging what we're doing, but also having that data helps us to prioritise in terms of efficiency and what we obviously need to target first. So we've got a good culture in Wigan, and upskilling it plays a big part of that, and a big learning curve for us in the team. So it's about taking people on a digital journey. We need to explain what digital is to people in the authority who don't know what it is, show them so it's meaningful to them, but that repetition and keeping getting that out within the authority so they can see what true digital transformation looks like and what it means. And managing the skills as part of the whole organisation and making sure that we embed that and our voices are heard. You know, teams like Sam's teams just said they're on the ground doing the doing, we're not. We're trying to implement things and we can't obviously do that alone. So it's really important that we embed that. And what we're finding now is, and I'm smiling because it's great, but people are hungry for more. We've got work plans taken us well into next year in terms of what we want to do with the platform. So Amanda will go into a bit more detail in a second when I hand over to her about the skill and the capabilities, but we've recognised that in our team, and you know, looking at local authorities say job for life, but it's not the job that you have now. We've always got to keep adapting, evolving and changing, and that's where our skills come in really. And you know, the team's been pushed out the comfort zones, they really have, but they've taken that ownership, and I'm super proud of them all today. And you know, and Amanda's going to talk through that in a second.
Yeah, so as Tracey mentioned, I want to start talking about now what that's meant for our team and how we put that into practice. So, following our onboarding process with Jadu, we were straight up against some really rapid delivery that we needed to meet. So, just to give you a little bit of a background into terms of the challenges that we were facing, we needed to quickly create a new My Account citizen platform for our residents to engage with. The previous platform was well signed up to, so I could probably talk to you about that on another slide about our approach in relation to that. We needed to create applications that allowed residents to view the council tax bill and the housing benefits account. Again, that was something that was heavily subscribed to previously, so we needed to get that right. We had a big project, which I know we've touched on with the highways management, but we needed to replace the way that residents were reporting environmental issues to us. If I'm being honest, the previous way, which I know we've touched on around Report It, that had got messy over the years. There was about 70 different types of things that people could report through to us on that app, so that needed massively reviewing, streamlining. And then we also needed to look at linking to third-party solutions as well for some of our front-facing online services that we still had a contract for, so that covered registrars, pest control and bulky waste. So as you can see, big task. So yeah, this really is just to talk about the commitment that we already in place. So like I said, following that initial training with Jadu and the setup of the environment, we had a lot to get through. But the main priorities was around ending some of those third-party contracts that we had in place, because obviously that would deliver some cost savings. Before we started the procurement exercise as well, we did a lot of working with services and understanding what residents wanted from a digitally mature process. So we had really clear aims and objectives at the start of the project, which obviously leads on to system requirements and making sure that we were meeting their needs. We also, even though we had this big task against us, we had these clear aims and objectives, we didn't want to compromise on quality, and we had the digital strategy in place. We wanted to make those improvements for our residents and make sure that they're seeing those better outcomes. So before I go into our approach, I just want to talk through the structure of our team, and just so you can get an understanding of the size of us and the kind of skill set within it. This structure just focuses on the digital and the website of the team. We've also got an arm in relation to digital inclusion as well, where we're supporting residents across the borough to engage online digitally and upskill them. So just to touch on the inclusion side of the team as well, they're really key to us, because from a user testing perspective, they're the ones that are actually in the across the community, engaging with residents, understanding what the difficulties are. So again, I thought I'd just touch on that before I go into the web and digital. So the top two rows, that focuses on the kind of management team, and then so we've got Tracey, service manager, myself as business partner, who's managing the kind of team on a day-to-day basis and reporting into Tracey. We've got Steve, who's here today, so Steve predominantly, again, adapting to the change. He worked predominantly previously on the web development, but he's now part of lots of corporate kind of wide projects and providing some of that technical support and advice. And we've got Paul, who obviously you've heard of, who's been integral into the builds. Starting over onto the kind of left-hand side from a web perspective, so this was our existing team. So we've got Carl, who's our web developer, front-end developer. We've got Nathan, who is a lead content officer, and we've got Esme, who's our online services officer. So the web part of the team, they manage the website and the internal intranet centrally, so we get all the requests, coordinate that, and make sure that all the updates on. Also looking at development opportunities as well. So when we purchased the Jadu software, we had two positions at the time that we was going out to post for. We've got Kayla, who's here from today, is in the room with us. She's our online services development officer, so she works solely on the kind of Jadu builds of the forms and the workflows. We did actually advertise for a developer role as well, but we was unsuccessful. We really struggled to recruit from that role. So you can imagine at this point, we were thinking, right, how are we going to kind of deliver on all this? And this is where these conversations take place in terms of adapting, and it was a real opportunity for us. We're a small team, but we've got a great amount of skills that we can transfer. And I know I'll talk about this a little bit later, and I know Tracey's touched on it, but as a team, they're fantastic in terms of upskilling and engaging, and that's where the culture comes in as well, from a Wigan Council perspective. The only additional thing I would probably say on this is, and just to be honest around this, is we have had to pay for a little bit of development time, but it has been minimum in terms of what we've achieved, and that's helped with some of the integration. But again, as Paul mentioned, we're really working with the external IT partners and the developers, and we've developed those really good relationships with them. Our approach to this rapid delivery, so obviously we had the low-code solution, which was a key enabler for us to be able to manage in-house and start looking at how we can upskill within the team. So one of the first points and the elements of the approach was in relation to upskilling and cross-training. So it was key for us that obviously we couldn't just have Kaylee building all these processes, the one role that we kind of recruited to. So we started looking across, Paul obviously integral to the builds now as well. We started to kind of, everyone got on that journey in terms of understanding the software. It's fair to say that we had super users within the team, but what that then allowed us to do was look at our priorities across the whole team and start realigning and you know, moving people over so that it could help with this task that we had ahead of us. The Wigan behaviours, I know we've touched on these today, but these are the values within the council and the culture that we adopt. But actually, for what seemingly simple behaviours have been really key to this project, and I think this project is a shining light of those examples in practice. So just to run through, but accountable, the team have been really accountable for their own learning, kind to each other, we generally support each other, and making sure that we're providing that understanding and we're working together closely. Positive in the challenge, as you can see, and I'll say it's not been easy, it's been difficult, but I think that positive mindset, we've all had our moments, but we've all supported each other and knew the job that we needed to get done. Courageous as well, you know, people adopting the roles and the way that they're working, that's been massive as well. So that's where the behaviours have come in. One of the approaches we took as well was service-based working. So I know we've touched on Sam's team, we'll be touching on customer services shortly after the break. But what we did from a team perspective is we allocated a member of the team to work with the services so that they really got to understand that service. And what that allowed us to do was it kind of quickened up the process when we truly understood the needs and how they were working. And obviously those really key relationships that you need when you're working with services to build your processes. Adapted roles. So again, we needed to get a job done. That was the only way that we was going to be able to do it. So again, you started seeing elements of things like you'd see around, I don't know, business and systems analysts, designing, development, project management, process design, starting to creep into our roles, and we all kind of took on our own kind of element and started expanding and our skill sets as well that we needed to adapt because we didn't have anyone that we could call on. I don't think the team actually probably appreciated me for this next one, but we actually jumped straight in and started looking at some of those more complex builds first. There was no slowly kind of easing us into it because we had a massive task ahead. But actually, on reflection, that worked really well. What it did was it helped us kind of mitigate any unexpected kind of functionality that we might have to build later on by looking at those complex first. We was new to the platform, there was a lot of learning that needed to be done. So actually it did, and I hope the team agree with this, but escalate that learning as well. It made them start thinking at the beginning the kind of flexibility that we had with the tools and what we needed to do. I'm sure there was a few mutterings under breath when we tackled that, but it actually it worked really well. And what we did as well, we took a bit of a hybrid approach in relation to the build, just time for one, but also depending on what the service needs were. So we took 3 approaches. We had, as you've heard, around the network management approach. We had an approach whereby we was integrating with a back office system. We also had an approach where we've actually moved our environmental services team off the back office system completely, so they're now managing all the caseloads and everything through Jadu. And then we also had a light touch approach as well, so where they're just managing the kind of customer contact through Jadu as well. So we had three different approaches. So yeah, as you can see there, the results, and just reiterating what Tracey said, it's amazing to see these figures up there in such a short period of time. It was 18 months from start to finish, but we got 40 case types live in 18 months. We've now got 93,500 My Account users as well, which is actually quite staggering, because when we did our kind of user research at the beginning, people didn't always want to create a My Account in order to engage with us as a council. So we removed that barrier so they can either do it through My Account or standalone on the web, but then we still got that uptake of 93,000 users, which is increasing all the time. And then just to give you some kind of context in relation to the case types, 40,000 cases have been submitted using those 40 case types in the last 12 months. So that's obviously customer contact with us. So lessons learned and iteration, and I know you've heard this today as well, but for us it's really important that we've got this continuous improvement cycle. We've built rapidly, we've built quickly, and so, you know, might not have got things right the first time, but we're fine with that as long as we're looking at it, we're analysing it, we're improving it. We've actually, over the last 2 years of using the product, we've actually found better ways of doing things as well now. So what we're finding is our later projects were a little bit more streamlined, some of the case types. So what we've been doing is holding workshops with our services to understand what's working well, what isn't working well, and sharing those kind of different approaches and adapting the case types that we've got to make them more streamlined and better. We've developed kind of reusable components and council standards. That to us is really important from the kind of service and the resident perspective, because we're giving that consistency, and from an accessibility point of view and a digital inclusion point of view, they expect the same kind of journey. We launched feedback questionnaires as well with our users, and we're hoping to do some more kind of targeted sessions with some of our users. But we're starting to get that feedback through now from residents. So again, the beauty of having that in-house product that we have control over, we can act on that, analyse it, look at the different themes and make improvements. So I think as well that kind of that permission to innovate, you know, we might get something slightly wrong, but we're not scared to try, and I think it's having that kind of backing from leadership that we can do that that's really important to us. But yeah, it's been difficult, fast-paced, but yeah, it's fantastic, and it's great now looking at this next stage to see how we can improve. Just before I hand you back to Tracey as well, I just wanted to kind of focus on job satisfaction, because I know we've talked about adapting and making sure that we're growing our own. But I just thought I'd focus on some of the team, and as manager of the team, what's been really nice over the last few years is watching them develop that enthusiasm that they've got. And obviously with discussions of them, these are the kind of key things, because we know that obviously job satisfaction is key to retaining that talent. So teamwork, obviously I'm hoping this has come across today, but really supportive and collaborative team. We've touched on this again today, but flattening that hierarchy. We had a job to do. We've gone through this journey together. We've all rolled our sleeves up. I remember on the last day of the contract when that was ending, we was over at the waste depot. We still had 2 processes left to build. Paul and Kaylee were tweaking some. Paul was coaching me trying to build a process at the same time. It was mental, but it was fantastic, and it's really brought together our team as a group. Highly motivated, as Paul said at the beginning, mid-50s, absolutely loving his career, enjoying, the change in the direction that it's gone to. They're accountable for their own learning. One thing that's really nice to see is that problem solving and those eureka moments that they have. They've got that power now to be able to look at a problem and develop their own solution, which is fantastic. And of course, from a professional development point of view, it's been great for them. And then the results that we see, they're feeling valued, they deliver, they're now integral to the digital transformation agenda that the council have got, and we're in demand. We've got a list of projects from internal, external, of what people want us to start delivering on. So, hand back to you, Tracey. Sustainability.
Yeah, thank you. So as you just heard from Amanda now, it's been a massive challenge. So what we need to start with is reset, refocus, and how to reshape ourselves now, because as you know, things do change. We need to deliver quickly and more agile and user-centred way with the local solutions. But how do we keep up that pace? Because as Amanda said, we've all been working flat out, and this is what today is all about, because we want to collaborate with other councils, linking in what you're doing. We don't want to do it on our own. We want to do it together. We're better doing things together. We're all more or less using the same back office systems. We're all coming across the same kind of problems, and hopefully we'll get into a little bit of this after coffee, into the workshop. And Amanda said I'm very, very passionate about growing our own and upskilling, and having a multidisciplinary team, and I think how we can learn from each other is so important, and sustaining it has not been easy, and now we start to know what we can look and do. And quite recently we've taken on, only for 15 very short days, 2 university students with our partnership that we've got with Jill at the moment. And that has been so important, because we're upskilling our future generation as well into the jobs of the future, because we need to bring those in now as we move forward with different technologies, with the AI and RPA. So, and an important one thing for me is what we've both done, is we need to stop starting and start finishing, because we get loads of things thrown at us, and we need to take a minute and do that. And that'll really help shape our effort in delivering what we need to do, but refocus everything to get through work demands in the best effective way, really. So, and just 5 minutes into coffee, so we'll leave questions till end, but thank you for listening to us this morning. So we'll have a quick coffee break now, and I think we're back about 20 past, right?
Yeah, about 20 minutes. Thank you very much.